Hello. 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 It's good to be here finally after another busy, intense day. I work from home and sometimes I can't pull the brakes on the locomotive freight train. Too many other things going on. And increasingly, I know I just need to change the time to this show to probably 6 p.m. instead of keeping that blurb up about it being 5 p.m. when I almost never can honor that anymore. Wait for some more people to get on here, but should have checked my appearance a little bit before I came on. I don't know if any of you guys do this who do your own live streams. I just sometimes will go on to the photo booth part of my laptop and just check out my appearance, see how I look on the video camera before I go on here. It's probably a little more reliable than a mirror. Hey, Andy, how are you doing? Oh, I'm glad you don't mind the lateness. Well, for some people, it's a big deal because of I have a lot of people on the East Coast. There's a 3 hour time difference. And even for me, I'd like to be on here a little bit earlier too, because I keep on working throughout the evenings. And what is this? Ricky Sells California? Hi. Well, it's great to have you here. Welcome aboard and thank you for joining us. How are you guys doing? Anything new? Anything exciting? For here in La La Land, it is another heat wave. Well, it seems like we've never ended our heat wave, but they announce on the news that we've got another one coming in. And I'm like, we didn't even finish this one. What do you mean there's another heat wave coming in? So I hope you'll pardon the sound of the fan blowing in the background. I have my air conditioner on, but it's just not enough, especially with all this humidity. And because it's so humid, my poor little air conditioner is leaking water. And unfortunately, not on the outside. Some of it's coming in through the front. So I'm having to keep a pan underneath it and continuously mop my kitchen floor, which maybe it's not a bad thing, as my kitchen floor probably needs mopping more often. And yes, unfortunately, about Hayden Pantier, I figured people would be wanting to talk about that. Um, what can we say? That's an extreme tragedy. Only 36 years old, had an 11-year-old daughter. I have to confess, I didn't know a whole lot about her. I remember she had that show, that series called Nashville. But I didn't know that she had been um, a, a working actor almost literally her entire life. I mean, she went beyond just being a child star. Her career started when she was 8 months old. 8 months old doing commercials. And as I saw from the news clips, she did grow up literally in front of the world on television and in movies. I'm sorry I didn't know more about her. But yes, it's pretty much figured that it is related to her addiction problems. We have to be careful what we say because nothing has, of course, been confirmed. But a 36-year-old woman found to be in cardiac arrest with a history of addiction, it does kind of lead in that direction, but it's a terrible tragedy. I do have one friend, or she's really more of an acquaintance to me, but she met Hayden back in 2008. It was some sort of fundraising thing for animal causes. I'm sorry to say I don't remember the specifics of what it was, but she told me that Hayden was so sweet and so down to earth and so gentle. And she was very saddened to hear the news. Many times because where I worked, I met so many celebrities, literally hundreds, that when one of them would pass away, and if it had been someone that even if I had just been lightly acquainted with, it hurt more because I had that little bit of a personal connection. That's why I felt when Heath Ledger died, I only met him once and spent about 10 minutes with him, but nonetheless, 10 minutes. I got to have a nice chat with him, and so it hurt all the more, and he died 9 months later. Let me see here from Aroha 911. Hi, Chuck. I'm very sorry that I haven't been on here and passed on my condolences to you. This hit me very hard as I said goodbye to my baby boy, Murphy. your dog in April. Well, thank you for your condolences. It has been, not to belabor this. Maybe I've talked about it too much, but it has been 3 weeks now, and the words that all of you have had have meant a lot to me. I've had a number of personal emails, messages, your comments here, also from the Oracle of Whimsy channel, where I work with Dr. Whimsy Anderson on 2 shows a week. Everybody got to know Sasha. Sasha, my Siamese cat, became quite the media star, as many of you know. Many a time she would walk by here and she'd be ready to lunge on the keyboard or something, or she just wanted attention. She wanted me to pick her up and hold her up to the camera. I almost feel like I'm holding her now. I miss that so very, very much. But I'm so sorry about your own dog, Murphy. And very good friend of mine. I want to respect her privacy, and she might even be joining here later. She had to, let's put it this way, she had to help her little dog make the transition to the Rainbow Bridge yesterday, and she's just heartbroken and devastated. And I wrote her back and said, I know. And I also understand if you don't want to talk about it, because I didn't want to talk about it either for a few days. But if you do, I'm going through the same grief you are, and I'm here. I don't know if you'll be joining later. I'll say it again if you do. And Pat Sparrow, nice to see you too. And from Aroa 911, hello from a very cold and blustery winter's day in New Zealand. My sister's been to New Zealand. She loved it. She's Australia, New Zealand. I hope one day I can make it. And considering we're in the midst of a miserable, hot, muggy heat wave here, I would trade places with you. I'm one of those weird people who actually loves winter weather. I really do. I know I'm weird. But like one of the happiest times of my life in recent years was when I went to Boston in December, and it was about 17 degrees. But I think with the wind chill factor, it was like minus something or another below 0 for those of you in Celsius. I keep remembering there are parts of the world, like my friend in Canada, where so you go by Celsius and not Fahrenheit. Pardon me, I had that all backwards there. But anyway, I'm glad to have you here, and it's exciting to have someone from New Zealand. I know I have another viewer from Amsterdam, wrote me a very lovely message. It's just great to have a worldwide community here. That really means a lot. Let's see. Doug, did you ever watch the show Heroes? I know of the show Heroes. I might have caught a few episodes here and there. I used to be friends with Brian Fuller, who was the creator of that show. I don't know. I think he even wrote some of the episodes. Let's see here. Debbie. Oh, am I saying this right? Let me see here. Debbie B. 6868. Pardon me. I'm focusing my reading contact lens here. Please pardon me if I ever get your names wrong. And thank you for your condolences on Sasha. She's very missed, by many people. I've had so many people tell me they're going to miss her presence on the show. And I got a lot of it out of my system when I talked about it here 3 weeks ago. That was my intention, just to devote the whole 2 hours and just get it out of my system and talk about it. But inevitably, it is going to come up again, because one of the things I said is grief is like an ocean wave. It will just hit you out of nowhere when you least expect it. You think you're fine, and then you're not. But then you're fine again. You have to go on. And I know Sasha would want me to go on. She loved me, and that's part of love. And hi, Kelly. And let's see, comments here. Oh, Portland, Oregon would be perfect, and near Whimsy too. Yes. Well, actually, Portland gets very hot also. Very hot also. And then you got to deal with all the rain up there. And yeah, I know that sounds whiny and complaining. I came from the East Coast where it rains a lot, but I've been in Southern California too long, and I am too spoiled by 9 or 10 months of sunshine. But then we get it all at once in the wintertime. Let's see. What was this here? Rowan 911. Yes, I love winter. It's currently sitting on 11 degrees Celsius with the wind chill bringing it down to 7 degrees Celsius. Oh, I wish I had my Celsius conversion chart here, but I'm going to take your word for it that that's darn cold. Hi, Rockin' Pony Lady. I always like your name, Rockin' Pony Lady. Andy, no, I don't know who Ted Lewis is. I'm sorry to say, not only do I not have stories, I don't know who Ted Lewis is. Maybe you could fill me in a little, prompt me. Maybe I could come up with something. Let's see, any other comments here? But yes, with Sasha, it was just such a bizarre thing to have one of my best friends in the world go through this with her own dog yesterday. What was this? Ted Lewis, he always celebrated New Year's and said, "Is everybody happy?" I don't know why that's not familiar with me, Andy. I'm so sorry here. I always pride myself on being good on these topics, show business stories and all, but you stumped me there. Sorry about that. But yeah, one of my very, very best friends, her little dog, and I love that little dog too, a little cute little Maltese, and mourning that as well. What was this, Sandy? Harvey Korman did an impression on a Carol Burnett show skit. Oh, I'm sure Harvey was marvelous. Oh, well, the Carol Burnett show is one of my all-time favorites. Wore a top hat, and I think he played a clarinet. Oh my God, I'm trying to place him. Oh my God. And I know this is not the person, but why am I thinking of Charlie Chase for some reason? But that's obviously not the person. Oh yeah, maybe I'll look him up after the show. How's that? Maybe next week I'll be a little more qualified to talk about him there. I was just talking with someone the other day about the Carol Burnett show, how much we love that. I love New Year's Eve. I love especially 1930s Art Deco and the martinis and the cocktail shakers and the top hats and everything. But let's see what's going on with people out there. Anything you'd like to talk about? Any comments? Any suggestions for a topic? I'm just all open-minded here. Something I can talk about. What was this here? I thought, last week was the 40th anniversary of when I saw Lucille Ball perform. Never got to meet her, but I got to see her perform live. I thought, well, chance to always work in my artwork here, my portrait of Lucille Ball, big canvas painting here. But it was 40 years ago. She was trying to revive her television career. She had been away for 12 years after Here's Lucy in 1974, and she'd always said she was never going to come back. She said, I can't top myself. Why should I do that? But it was in the mid 80s that enough people did persuade her to try to come back. And part of it was fueled by the great success of the Golden Girls in 1985, where it proved older women could be a viable force on television, be very, very successful. And I think there was clamoring from the networks. This was ABC. She had never worked on that network, and they were looking for their own similar type of show, something with a revered older actress like Lucy. You just didn't get bigger than her. So she got talked into doing it against her better judgment. It was a series called Life with Lucy. And she even went so far. Oh, hi, Joyce. Thank you for joining. She went so far as to get one of the original directors of I Love Lucy, Mark Daniels, to come back. She got her original I Love Lucy writers, Bob Carroll Jr. and Madeline Davis. It was Madeline Pugh, depends on who she was married to at the time. Got them to come back, a number of other people who had worked on the crew of I Love Lucy, and it just seemed like a winning formula. She even persuaded Gail Gordon to come back. And, Gail Gordon, of course, has the distinction of being the one person who ever appeared on every single broadcast series Lucille Ball ever did. And we're talking going back to radio. We're talking back to 1938 when Lucille Ball and Gail Gordon were both regulars on Jack Haley's show called The Wonder Show. And Jack Haley, of course, played the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. It was a half-hour musical variety show. 10 years later, they did a series called My Favorite Husband, which was really the basis of I Love Lucy. And Gail Gordon played a prominent role on that alongside Lucy. She very much wanted him to play Fred Mertz on I Love Lucy, but he was already committed to another show. I think it was Our Miss Brooks with Eve Arden. And just like she wanted her other co-star on the show, Bea Benaderet, to play Ethel Mertz, but she was committed to doing the Burns and Allen shows. So hence other actors, famously William Frawley and Vivian Vance got those roles. But Gail Gordon did appear on 2 episodes of I Love Lucy, and he also appeared on one of the hour-long episodes. And then, of course, famously joined the Lucy show as Mr. Mooney, and then he was Uncle Harry on Here's Lucy. So he was on every single broadcast show Lucille Ball ever did. They had a working relationship going back almost 50 years. So they came back to do the show. And it was one of those things, that saying, it looks good on paper, all of the elements. Even had a 24 episode commitment from ABC. And then it got made. And when I went to see it, it was August 14th, 1986. It had not premiered yet on the network. It was still being filmed. These were like some of the very first episodes. So it looked really promising and everybody was all excited about it. And the studio audience was excited. And for me, I had just moved out to Southern California 10 months earlier. So I couldn't believe my luck that I was here in time to see my all-time idol, the woman I had idolized since I was 2 years old. I'm not kidding, since 2 years old. And I it was hard to get a ticket. I got a ticket. And then I found out that ticket did not guarantee admission because they purposely overbook these things. They give out more tickets than they have seats because they want to ensure they have a full theater. I guess theater is the right word for it. It's actually a sound stage, but nonetheless, the audience seats and everything. And so I was there in line. It's like one of the few times I've ever done this. Please God, let me in. Oh, please let me in there. Please, I'm begging you. Please. I was literally praying. I wanted so much to see my beloved Lucille Ball in person. And I made the cut. I got in and they seated me near the back, but you were still close enough to the 3 sets that were built side by side. And it was about a 45-minute wait before they actually started filming. And so I still remember sitting there, my heart pounding out of my chest. I was like trembling. That's how much I wanted to see Lucy and how much I'd always loved her. And I remember Gary Morton, her husband, came out and did the audience warm up. And he introduced people in the audience, had Bob and Madeline, the writers, stand up. And let's see, Meredith McRae was in the audience because her husband had a role on the show. And Mary Wicks. And if you guys don't know who Mary Wicks is, she was on many of the various Lucy shows. Probably most famously, the episode of I Love Lucy, where Lucy wanted to be a ballerina. Madame Ricardo. Mary Wicks was the stern taskmaster. A 1, a 2, a 3, a 4. And Lucy, of course, got stuck in the ballet bar. That was Mary Wicks. So anyway, she was there in the audience. And Gary Morton made the claim to the audience that Mary Wicks never missed a filming of any of Lucy's shows. Now, I don't know how true that is, but that's what he claimed. And he then announced Lucy's special guest star tonight is John Ritter. And I'm like, what? It was like I just was there to say Lucy and Gail Gordon. I thought, John Ritter too? Wow, what a night. What a night. So he was the special guest star. And I still remember when, they had people come out and take bows before the show, but they said, Lucy, we want you to save your applause for Lucy for when she comes out. And, they wanted it on camera. And of course, when Lucy walked out onto the hardware store set, the applause was just deafening. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't have to stop the show. It just went on and on and on and on. And it was just thrilling to see her. I couldn't believe I was seeing her in person. And then John Ritter, a few minutes later, came on and they started doing all this shtick where they were climbing up and down a ladder. And then there was a later bit where, he injured himself in the hardware store. So Lucy's character had to take him home so he could rest. And she's trying to feed him health food, like a baby bird or something. And he starts choking, and they had all these physical antics. And Lucy broke up laughing. She broke up laughing, and they had to stop the scene. And Lucy turned to the audience, took the microphone, turned to the audience and said, I want you to know that's only the second time in my entire career that has ever happened. And Lucy was notorious for hating to do retakes. So I saw her and the director and some other person, they huddled together. I could see Lucy. They were having some intense conversation, and they decided, obviously, not to redo the scene. And it was later when I watched the broadcast version of it, I saw the moment just before she started to break up laughing, it faded to black and went to commercial. So that's how they got around it. But it was just such an exciting night. And I will never forget that as long as I live. And I couldn't believe it when I was reminded the other day on the 14th that it was the 40th anniversary. And I guess I better get you some comments here, but I wanted to tell that little story since it did tie in. And I do try to have Lucy and old Hollywood stories on here. That was the original intention of this channel before we started doing other things. Like at the prompting of my great mentor, Dr. Whimsy Anderson, I now do intuitive readings on here. And I also do those privately. And I do channeled readings, and I also take art commissions. So little plug for myself there. But let me go back here on the comments. I want to make sure. I see a lot of people saying hello to each other. But Andy, I'm sorry to see you've been a little stressed there. I've had a lot of people telling me that. In fact, hi, Joyce. I don't know if you've been doing any astrological readings for people. Maybe you have an idea of what is going on. I know we're coming out of the Lionsgate portal, and we're coming out of some eclipses, and we're coming off of a Mercury retrograde, and God only knows what else. But it seems like people I talk to, and I talk to people all over the country every day because that's part of my work. As Dr. Whimsy's assistant, I make phone calls to people, and so I hear these stories of what people are going through, and it's a little challenging, but I also feel optimistic. We're going to be fine. Oh, Andy, yeah, I hadn't thought about what happened to Ward. He hasn't been on here for a while. Rowan 911, I remember Lucille doing that movie about a homeless woman. It was called Stone Pillow, and it was done the year before Life with Lucy. And it was very well received in the ratings. Got, as far as I recall, good reviews, and it got good ratings. And that was another reason why the networks were eager to bring Lucille Ball back to primetime television. And it was a very, very different role. And, we forget that Lucy, at the core of herself, was a great, great dramatic actress. That's how she started out. And because I have studied acting, and some really greats, like with Dee Wallace, for example, and we were always taught, You play comedy exactly the same you would if you're playing drama, meaning you go for the honesty of the moment, you find the truth in the situation. It's just that with comedy, you're maybe raising your stakes higher and you're incorporating some rhythmic timing and so forth. Comedy is actually the harder of the two. It really and truly is. There's much more into it, but it has to be rooted in dramatic truth. So that's why Lucy was so brilliant on I Love Lucy, because she wasn't just playing comedy, she was playing truth. You watch that woman, you watch her like on a big screen TV in full 4K high definition. Look at her eyes. Look at all the wheels turning behind her eyes. Look at the subtleties of her facial expressions. Watch her body language. Every cell of her body was believing in the moment what she was doing. In fact, Lucy even said that once when she was asked about her technique. She said, I consider myself to be a child believer, meaning I approach everything like a little girl who just believes everything, like a child believing their fantasy world. She said, no matter how preposterous the plot would be, the circumstances presented to her, she believed it just like a child would believe it. She committed to it. And that's what makes Lucy Ricardo so multidimensional. I invite you to watch her. It's also interesting when many of us have watched those shows countless times. I've probably seen every episode at least 75 to 200 times. It's fun to watch for things in the background. I love sometimes to watch Desi, who was a master, by the way. I think he was one of the greatest sitcom actors who ever lived. He's never gotten the credit he deserved. And the fact that he held his own next to the woman who was considered the greatest comedian who ever lived, he held his own. He was solid. And furthermore, he brought out the best in Lucy. She was like the diamond, but he was the setting for the diamond. He gave her security. He gave her confidence. He brought out her femininity. He brought out her little girl vulnerability in ways that I've never seen any other leading man ever do. And all the movies she ever made, all the other TV shows, Desi just brought out dimensions in her. He was so good. But I love to watch him because sometimes you see him just standing there in awe of Lucy. He's watching her and you can see he's so proud of her. You see he loved her and you see how proud he was of his wife. And sometimes you just see the look of awe, like, how did she do that? So, check that out sometime. But anyway, it was that homeless woman she played, and that it was Stone Pillow, and that's what led to Life with Lucy. But unfortunately, Life with Lucy did not work out. They had a 24 episode commitment, but it got canceled after only 8 episodes. And there were 5 episodes that never aired. There's now a DVD set that has all 13 of the completed episodes on there. And the show got much better, oddly enough, in those 5 unaired episodes. And you can see if ABC had just given it more time, let it have the full season, the show would have found its bearings. It would have found its voice. They were trying too hard in the beginning to make Lucy, Lucy was playing a 75-year-old grandmother in this, and which she was 75 at the time. And they were trying to have her do a lot of heavy physical comedy like she used to do, and she could still do it. But nonetheless, I think it scared people when you saw a 75-year-old woman going up and down ladders and taking pratfalls and stuff. And they started to settle into something a little more realistic, a little more down to earth, a little more grounded in the final episodes. And they also, there was one episode that I thought it was the best thing she and Gail Gordon had ever done together, because they had all that history, going back to 1938. And of course, Mr. Mooney and Uncle Harry and all that. There was all that built-in history the audience knew. So they took advantage of that with characters where they had a really vulnerable heartfelt moment, a real heart-to-heart talk that only two people could have who had decades of background. And it's beautiful. You almost want to cry when you watch it, but it never aired. Thank goodness it's on the DVD. And you see how special it was, what she had with Gail Gordon. And I am so lucky. 40 years later, I can still say I was so lucky to be there to watch that live. I didn't get to meet Lucy, but I got the next best thing. I got to watch her work. I got to watch the greatest situation comedy star who ever lived film a sitcom. And considering she had been away all those years, 12 years since she'd last done a show, and then she came back and there were only these handful of episodes, I was one of a few hundred people who got to witness that. I'm grateful. And the irony is, it was after Lucy died. Then I started meeting people. I started to meet her husband, Gary Morton. I mean, I shook hands with him there, but I got to meet him. I got to meet Lucy Arnaz, Desi Jr. I got to meet many of her friends, many of her coworkers, Bill Asher, the director of the show, Bob and Madeline, the writers. I mean, it's like, where were you all when Lucy was alive? Maybe you could have used your connections to get me in to see her, but at least I have had that, and I've been very lucky. And when I worked with my late friend Bart Andrews on an I Love Lucy book we were trying to get sold, he gave me access to his Rolodex. Remember Rolodexes? You know, things you turn with all the phone numbers and stuff. You know, and I got to just interview these people and talk to them and get to know them. And I could not have been more in heaven, you know, even though we had trouble publishing the book because we got as far as Random House and the senior editor who wanted it, but it was the quote unquote money people, the money people who shot it down because it was considered too expensive. You know, it was going to be like $20,000 alone just for the rights to the photos. 15% was going to go to CBS, who owned the rights to the show. 10% was going to go to Lucy Arnaz and Desi Jr. because they owned the rights to their parents' images. And there also were tremendous legal fees. When you're doing nonfiction, you have to have it combed through carefully for any kind of potential libel. I probably would have ended up owing money if that book had sold, but I'm still sorry it never happened. And it's not the kind of thing you can really self-publish for the reasons I just mentioned, all the royalties that you owe to certain people, and you have to have pictures in a book like that. But I like to say I got my doctorate in Desilu because I spent about 3.5 years helping to write that book. I was eating, sleeping, and breathing Lucy. I can't think of a better thing to be doing. Let's see, where's some other comments here. From Connecticut. Hi. Maria Milo 1. Thank you. Red Rose. If I miss a name here, let's see. At Arsha 0094. Thank you for joining me, Red Rose. And of course, Joyce Petrus is here, and Debbie Beef, 6860, Andy. Let me keep going here. A lot of people saying hello to each other. I'm way behind on my comments here. Let's see here. Okay, let me go back. I went down a little too far. Thank you for your patience with me. I went way down too far. Okay, I think I'm back where I'm supposed to be here. Yes, Rock and Pony Lady, it was incredible to be there. In fact, I was in West Hollywood on August 14th, which I don't make it there that much anymore because I live in a different part of LA now. And I thought, darn it, why did I not think of that? Because I could have gone in front of the studio because it's still there and the walkway and everything. And I could use my iPhone and I could have shot a location video telling the story. Maybe I'll still go back. It just won't be on the anniversary anymore. What was this, Andy? I had a Marx Brothers question. No, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. What was your question, Andy, about the Marx Brothers? Maybe that's something I can answer. So if you could please retype it for me. Andy, I love the story. While Desi was in his bed before he died, he got that lovely call from Lucy. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've told that on here, but it is a true story. And we know it's true because it came from their daughter, Lucy Arnaz. It's worth telling, even though I've told it before. Some of you may not know it. It's one of the it's almost like a scripted moment. Like if you were doing a movie about the life of Lucy and Desi, this would be the perfect closing scene. Desi was very ill with lung cancer, and daughter Lucy Arnaz was taking care of him. He was very ill, and in fact, there's a little part of the story just before that infamous phone call. It was about 3 weeks before he died. Lucy wanted to come down. He was down in Del Mar, California. That's where he was staying. His home was, and Lucy wanted to drive down to see him, and Desi didn't want Lucy to see him bald and emaciated, from the chemotherapy and everything. He was just ravaged. He looked awful. And he was like, no, I don't want you seeing me like this. I don't want you remembering me like this. And Lucy was like knocking on the bedroom door. Oh, come on, Desi, it's okay. It's okay. Let me in. Let me in. And he finally relented. And Lucy came in. And I should say Lucille came in for the sake of clarity, because daughter Lucy, who spells it Lucie, Lucy Seal was Lucy. Daughter Lucy came in, and this was back in the late 80s, brought in a stack of videotapes of I Love Lucy and put them by the TV, and she just left her mother and father alone. And Lucy Arnaz said, as the afternoon progressed, she could hear all of this laughter. Just raucous laughter. Both of them. Lucy had a very deep voice at that point. She could hear all this deep voice laughter in the other room. And Desi's voice, honey, you were so wonderful. And she was going, no, you were wonderful. You were wonderful. It was that. She heard that all afternoon, the laughter, and they were just praising each other, how wonderful they were. And then they said their goodbyes. And then it was 3 weeks later. Desi was in very bad condition. He was slipping in and out of consciousness. He wasn't eating anymore. He wasn't drinking anymore. And Lucy Arnaz got on the phone, called her mother, and said, it was when he was conscious. And she said, Mom, he's conscious right now. And I think if you want to say anything to him, you better do it now. I don't think he has much longer, and he's conscious right now. And Lucy Arnaz said she could hear her mother. Well, all right. Kind of caught her mother off guard, obviously. And she held the phone to Desi's ear. And Desi was so weak, he couldn't even hold his hat up anymore. And she was holding the phone. And she could hear her mother's distinctive, deep voice going, I love you, Desi. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. She was just saying it different ways, putting emphasis on it. I love you. I love you. And then Desi was very, very weak, but he managed to say, I love you too, sweetheart. And then, according to Lucy Arnaz, he closed his eyes and went back into a coma. And he never regained consciousness. So literally the last thing he ever consciously heard was Lucille saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. The last words he ever spoke were to her saying, I love you too, sweetheart. Absolute 100% true story according to their daughter. And don't you agree that would be a fabulous last scene for a movie about their lives? But that was a difficult month for Lucy because her show had just been canceled 2 weeks earlier. And then her soulmate, Desi, died. And that was when Lucy's health started to deteriorate very rapidly. She started having a series of strokes, heart ailments, and she herself was gone about 2.5 years later as well. And friends of hers that I was able to talk to confirmed to me how depressed she was and how she gave up on life. After that show was canceled, she would tell her friends, nobody wants to see me anymore. Nobody cares about me anymore. Oh, they care about Lucy Ricardo and all that, but they don't care about me now. They don't want me. That's what she would actually say. And she had friends who would just come over to the house and play backgammon with her. She loved to play games. She had a little pool house outside, and it was a game room. And yeah, it was just like she was waiting to die. Because Lucille Ball lived to perform. And I think as long as she always thought she had that security that audiences still wanted her, she could come back. That kept her going. And when this happened, it convinced her she no longer had that. The audiences didn't want her anymore. And it's so ironic because there was a Gallup poll taken like 3 months or so, I could be wrong on that, before she died. And the question was, who is the most loved woman in the world? Well, Mother Teresa was number one. Princess Diana came in number two. Number three was Lucille Ball. And yet this is the woman who became a recluse and just wanted to play board games with her friends and was convinced nobody cared about her anymore or wanted to see her anymore. And I think there's a little lesson in that for all of us, how we can get so wrapped up in our own depressions, our own pity parties, that we can create delusions where we don't see the actual truth of what it is. So if that story helps anybody in that respect to see something about themselves, maybe take another look about it. Anyway, that's the story there. Sorry if it took too long to tell that. Lucy and Carol Burnett together is the best timing I've ever seen on TV. Well, Lucille Ball adored Carol Burnett, absolutely adored her. In fact, she was a great mentor. It was when Carol Burnett did Once Upon a Mattress off Broadway in 1959. Lucy was there the second night. Carol Burnett tells that story, how she looked through the curtains and saw this big flaming red hairdo out in one of the front rows. And she said she was more scared that second night than the first. But Lucy came back to the dressing room after the show and said, kid, because she was, I think, 24 years older, said, kid, anything I can do for you. And you call me, anything. And it was about 5-6 years later, CBS was going to, this was of course before the variety series. It was a variety special. CBS was going to let Carol Burnett do it. And this was when Carol Burnett was not that big of a star yet. And they said, we will let you do a variety show if you can secure one big name guest star. Well, Carol Burnett got on the phone, called up Lucy, and Lucy, before Carol could even speak, said, when do you want me? Apparently Lucy had already heard about it. When do you want me? And that special is on YouTube. It's wonderful. I think it's called Carol x2 because it's Lucille Ball and Zero Mostel. But there's some funny skits, especially the one where, Carol Burnett was always famous for that charwoman character, with the flowery hat and the mop and the bucket and everything. Well, Lucy was playing one also. And they were playing the cleaning women at the William Morris agency late at night. And they were going through all the garbage of all the executives and everything and discussing their own business mergers and deals with celebrities. It was quite cute. Let's see, what are the other comments here? What was this? F1 Fanic. Hi there. I hope you liked that channeled reading I did last week, Marie Antoinette. You were the one who got me to do that. In fact, I've got a piece of artwork I'll show in just a moment here. Did you say we're coming up on another Mercury retrograde? Oh, no, not again. Why so many lately? Well, no, we just came out of a Mercury retrograde. I think it was, about 2 weeks ago. But this was a really, really, really tough retrograde. And then we, of course, had the shadow and the wobble that went on for close to 2 weeks after that. And then it also coincided with the Lionsgate and Portal. And I don't know, Joyce, our resident astrologer, you could probably comment much better than me, but I think a lot of us were feeling it. And it was bringing a lot to the surface that was, we all have that stuff we don't want to look at. Well, this was bringing it all up where you had no choice to look at it. And I heard a lot of stories from people. I can laugh a little bit about it right now, but I was not laughing. I was going through it. But anyway, F1 Fennec, don't worry. I probably another retrograde for about another 3 months or so, I believe. And there's Kadam 1472. Hi there. Lucy and Carol, something called the Rock Sisters. I have to look that up, Andy. Kadam 1472. I glimpsed Dee Wallace at a recent horror convention, but didn't get to talk with her. Well, those conventions have become really big. Not just horror. There's comedy, there's old Hollywood conventions, but it's a chance for meet and greet with the celebrities, and get pictures taken and get autographs on photos. And of course, they often will charge a fee, but that's okay. That's part of the reason they're there. But people like Dee always love doing this because it is a great way to connect with the fans one-on-one and establish relationships. I don't have it here in front of me, and I'm not going to get up to get it because I don't want to leave blank space on the show right now. But I have, from one of those conventions, a replica I Dream of Jeannie bottle. I mean, a perfect replica, where you could buy the replica. There was a table for that. Then you took it over to the next table, and 91-year-old Barbara Eden would autograph the bottle for you. Take a Sharpie marker, and oh my God, that was the whole reason I went there, was just to get that Jeannie bottle. It wasn't cheap. It was not cheap. I think by the time I was done, I must have spent close to $300, but it was worth it because I knew if I hadn't, I would have been kicking myself forever, knowing I could have had a Jeannie bottle signed by Barbara Eden. But just knowing she held it in her hands, the real I Dream of Jeannie held the Jeannie bottle, but she took a marker and autographed it to me, signed Barbara Eden, and then below that she signed Jeannie. So it's in my china cabinet right now for safekeeping. And of course, Dee Wallace, she was my acting teacher for a long time, and I could get her to sign all kinds of stuff for me because I was always getting people like my sister. Would you get Dee to autograph my E.T. DVD? And I once joked with Dee. I said, an E.T. DVD signed by Dee. Sounds like Morse code, doesn't it? And then I think I even made this comment a week or two ago about how my very first teacher, acting teacher in college, was a woman named Dee Slaminsky. So I said to her, I went from D to D. I went from D to D, and I got Dee to sign my DVD of E.T. I think she found that funny. I don't know, but Dee Wallace is a great, great lady, and more than just an acting teacher, a wonderful spiritual teacher and coach. And I will always be grateful to have had her in my life. Profoundly grateful. But I'm sorry you didn't get to talk to her, because you would have found that she is just a very warm, loving person. Debbie B, 60, great story. I saw her house in Beverly Hills. You must be talking about Lucy. And unfortunately, it's the house, but it's not the house. New owners took it over, and they tore down the whole front of the house and rebuilt the facade. Maybe that was partly to dissuade all the tourists, because there were, even after Lucy died, there were still a lot of those Hollywood tour buses coming by with their loudspeakers and everything, and neighbors hate those things. I think people like Lucy just took it in stride, or at least she took it in stride to a degree. There is a funny story of how some family, presumably from the middle of America, got this bright idea to have a picnic on her front lawn. They actually put a blanket out, the family, the kids, the picnic basket, right on Lucy's front lawn. Lucy turned on the sprinklers. Took care of that problem. And I understand, our next door neighbor was James Stewart. And he was the one who advised her to do that. He goes, I do it all the time. He would turn on his sprinklers when tourists would start going through the front yard. Because, come on, they are entitled to their privacy. But, the interesting thing was how accessible Lucy's house was, and James Stewart and Jack Benny. You could literally walk up the sidewalk to their front door and knock. I didn't do that, but I think there were plenty of people who did. And I think, Lucy handled that by having a butler or a maid answer the door. But I think Lucy Arnaz once said there was literally not a day where they did not have at least 27 knocks on their front door. And the closest I ever came to doing something like that, because I mentioned Jimmy Stewart lived next door. And at the time, I didn't live too far from Beverly Hills. At nighttime, it was maybe a 5-10 minute drive from where I lived. And I had just watched James Stewart and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And if you've never seen that, it is such a beautiful performance. He should have gotten the Oscar for it. In fact, he did get the Oscar the next year for the Philadelphia Story, and many feel it was a consolation because he should have been given the Oscar for this movie. The final scene in the courtroom will just blow you away. In fact, I'll tell a little bit of a background. He's a senator. He's a senator, and he's a good senator. He's a senator with integrity, and he's encountering, guess what? A lot of corruption, Washington, D.C. corruption, even back in 1939. And he so opposes this bill they're trying to put through. And he begins a filibuster where he talks for about 24 hours nonstop. And the story was Jimmy Stewart wanted it to be authentic, in the final moments where he can just barely talk. He's so exhausted and so worn out. And he actually went to his doctor the day before the filming, and he said, I want you to give me a sore throat. And the doctor was like, you crazy actors, what do you mean? No, I want you to give me a sore throat. And it was some sort of mercury solution or something. And the doctor said, oh, you want a sore throat? I'll give you the darndest sore throat. Open up your mouth, and put the drops in. And sure enough, gave him a very painful sore throat. But when Jimmy was filming the scene, it was so effective because he was so hoarse and he could barely talk. And then he collapses in the courtroom. And I had seen it once before. I saw it on a big movie screen at the Sam Goldwyn Theater, and the audience, you could hear the audience crying. You could hear sniffling and sobbing. It was so moving. But I watched it again on television late at night. I was so moved by that performance. And I knew Jimmy Stewart lived 10 minutes away. And I really, really, really considered writing him a note. Just thank you, not wanting anything, just saying thank you for this beautiful performance. And I wanted to go take a thumbtack and pin it on the front of his door. And for some reason, I decided against it. I think because I had to be at work early the next day or something. But it was something I always regretted not doing. I think he might have appreciated seeing the note on his door. It would have been heartfelt and sincere. Let's see some other comments here. Oh, yes, Red Rose. Star Trek had its life because of the far-sighted, intelligent lady, Lucille Ball. That's 100% true because Lucy was head of Desilu Studios in the 1960s. She bought out Desi Arnaz's share after the divorce. They had 50-50 custody of Desilu, and it was just too much for Desi. I think at that point, his drinking had accelerated. He had had too much heartbreak in his life. His health was failing. And he asked Lucy if she would buy him out. And she did. She didn't really want to. Lucy always said she never wanted to have a studio, but she felt there was no choice. And she felt too many jobs depended on this. She was always mindful of her workers, and she was like a mother hen. She felt responsible for everybody. And she felt that nobody would give Desilu the love and the care that she would. So she took it over. So to cut to the chase, she went through a lot of pilots for series. And Lucy was a very smart woman. She's really good intuitive senses about television and what would work and what wouldn't. And she really liked the pilot for Star Trek. And the network didn't care for it. She couldn't sell it. And so she, at great expense, had a second pilot shot. She was determined to get that show sold. And she also did a lot of this out of her own pocket because big stars like Lucy, they were given a lot of perks, signing bonuses, perks by the network to keep them happy. And so a major star like Lucy, Jack Benny, Jackie Gleason, they would be given extra money that could be used for their production companies, for the production of pilots, that type of thing, but they could also keep the money if they wanted to. It was their choice. Lucy took the money and used it. And that was how she financed the 2 pilots for Star Trek. And she got it sold. And she was right. She was absolutely right. And that's why we have Star Trek to this day, because of Miss Ball. Let's see here. Oh, yes. Gale Gordon in the movie The Burbs. I think it was one of the last things he ever did. No, I never did meet Gale Gordon or John Ritter. I only got to see them in person. And Kelly, your phone is going out again, but thank you for joining. Hey, Andy, what was your Marx Brothers question? Let me see if I see it here. My phone froze up on me yesterday. And I was frantic. What am I going to do? Because the Apple store was closed. I needed my phone the next day for work. And so I went on artificial intelligence and I just asked the question, what do you do when your iPhone freezes? And they told me what to do. These 2 buttons on the side for volume, it said press each one quickly and then hold in this button on the side for about 10 seconds. Son of a gun, it worked. It unfroze my phone. So I'm passing that on to you. I don't know if it'll work for you or not, but if you ever need it. But batteries, unfortunately, they do go. Sometimes we just have to replace them because they can only be charged a certain number of times. Deb, thank you for your compliment. I feel a lot of people tell me I live an interesting life, but I just missed my place here. Let me go right back up. Okay, sorry, I lost my place. But thank you for that. I'm very humble about this, because I've lived in LA so many years that almost everybody who lives here has celebrity stories. They've met celebrities, they've encountered people, so I balance it out with that. But yet, some like my family in Colorado or Virginia or Massachusetts, I realize I guess it is a bigger deal because you don't encounter things like this. I've just gotten used to it, but thank you for that. Let me see if I can do this without skipping ahead. Emmer sent star for 2 jewels. Oh, how sweet. Oh, Maria Milo. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Was my brother Rui, did I say that right? Aware that I spoke to him a couple of hours before he passed away. Let me see here. Let me get my cards out. I apologize if I went off on too many tangents, but this is part of what I like to do on the show is talk about old Hollywood stories and share my experiences. But sorry, this is slow here, but and pardon me for not pronouncing your brother's name correctly if I got that wrong. But I did feel enough of his presence. What's interesting, these oracle cards I use them as prompts. I don't use them according to the traditional guidebook that came with them or anything. I use them just to stimulate my own intuition. But sometimes the cards will set up the circumstances. Well, I mean, this first card, death, which sometimes freaks people out, and it's not supposed to. But it's just, it's setting up that, about his passing. And as you can see, surrounded by angels, surrounded by light, surrounded by goodness. What I'm getting is that he's very much at peace right now. This came up. These are just the cards I got, but it's obvious. He's very much at peace, very much at rest. Very much, he's in his higher purpose right now. A new life is new beginnings on the other side. That's where he is right now. But he was hearing you. He was hearing you because he got gifts from that. Gifts from that. I got the family card, meaning you. The truth. That's the truth. He did pick up on that. And he also very much got your unconditional love and still has that on the other side. And, you're reminding me so much of my late father. By the time I got to him, I had to fly to be with him. I knew he was very ill. My sister told me it was time to come. I got there. He was already unconscious and in a coma and just breathing very heavily. I don't know your own circumstances there, but I sat there for 3 hours just talking to him, and I spent the 3 hours just thanking him for every single thing I could ever think of that I needed to thank him for and what he had made possible for me. And I know he was not conscious, but he knew I was there. He was responding a bit. I could see his, twitching, his movement of his body. I could see he was responding. He was hearing. But here's the thing. He died like within less than 2 hours after I left that hospital room. It was like he was holding on until I got there. Something in his soul was holding on until I got there. And once I was there, I know he knew I was there. I know he was hearing me. And then he knew it was okay to let go and release. It was just uncanny. So that's what I'm getting from these cards. It's just very lovely. And maybe if it does sound like it sounds like for some other people, it's because it is a good place on the other side. And many people are at peace when they do leave. But yeah, I'm getting, yeah. He heard you. He heard you. I hope that helps you. I hope that resonates with you. I hope that is authentic for you. And I am so sorry for your loss. It's like I mentioned, my beloved cat, Sasha, died 3 weeks ago. And I'm not comparing that, of course, to your brother by any means. But those of us who have had pets know that love, that relationship, that feeling of a beloved soul passing to the other side. And I was doing, and I hope this is acceptable to say this and you take it in the context I mean it, but I had to euthanize Sasha. So what I did, she was going in and out of consciousness. So they had her in like a little cloth basket and wrapped up in a blanket. And they said, take your time. We're 24 hours. You want to take all night before we do this. And they handed me a little buzzer to click when it was time to euthanize her. But I just spent like the last hour talking to Sasha, telling her how much I loved her, thanking her. And of course we did it, and she did pass on. And I could feel her. I do intuitive readings, of course, from the other side, but sometimes it's hard to do it when it's for your own self. And it's the wonderful Dr. Wim C. Anderson, who was a brilliant, heart-centered remote viewer, intuitive. And she tapped into Sasha for me. And she said, oh yes, Sasha heard everything you were saying. And she sends you her love back. And I'm going to tell you this, Maria, another story. My cat before, and this is how I knew he was hearing me, because one of the when he was laying dying, I said to him, "You have honored me with your love. You've honored me with your love." Well, flash forward a few days later, I was talking to a wonderful psychic friend of mine whose opinion I trusted very, very much. And she tapped into, his name was Charlie. He was another Siamese cat. And I said, "If you're tapped into Charlie, what does he want to say to me?" And keep in mind, I had told her nothing. And she said, "He's saying, you honored me with your love." Whoa. So he heard me. He heard me even though he was barely conscious. And that makes me feel all the more confident that your brother heard you, and also with these cards. All right, I hope that helps you. What was it? I would love taking care of a retired movie star, but not because of his celebrity status, just like taking care of people. Yeah, there was a thing a while back. Shirley MacLaine was looking for, I don't know if caretaker is the right word, because it's hardly like, well, she's 91 now, but it's hardly like she's incapacitated. But she was advertising for a caretaker assistant, and people were trying to get me to apply for it because we both come from Richmond, Virginia. And people were saying, "Oh, come on, with all your old Hollywood stories and your connection to Richmond, you'd be perfect." But I had heard she could be a little difficult, and I didn't do it, and someone else got the job. But maybe I missed out on something. Chuck, I checked the calendar. Your birthday lands on a Monday. When is your birthday, Andy? Let's see here. Yeah, I'm just going through the comments here. I hope you'll forgive me if I speed through these a little bit. What was this, Andy? I wonder if anybody loved Mrs. Brady or Mrs. Cunningham. Oh, well, they were certainly loved by the fans, that's for sure. Joyce Petrus, Marie Antoinette, your ancestor. I have that channeled reading from Marie Antoinette that I read last week, and I said I'm going to record a video. I'm not entirely finished with it, but I'm working on a portrait of Marie Antoinette right now. I'm still laying down some more watercolor. But I told the story of how I didn't want to copy another artist's work. So that basically left her death mask, but at least it was a chance to see her actual features and everything. And I understand the death mask was made by Madame Tussaud herself to make a wax figure of Marie Antoinette. So I worked from the photograph of the plaster statue that was made from the mask. And, because I thought that would come a little closer to working with her than just working with a painting that some other artist had done. Obviously, no cameras back then. So that's what I'm working on right now. And Joyce, so much is going on in our solar system and the universe. Really? I got to catch up with you, because it certainly feels like it right now. Love to hear what you have to say. What was this, Randy Damal? You just watched a mini documentary on Charo. She had quite a life, has had quite a life. And I see her sometimes on Facebook, and she's well into her 70s and looks extraordinary. Still has her moves. And I think she is considered one of the greatest flamenco guitarists. Did I say that right? Pardon me if I didn't, but flamenco guitarist. She's considered one of the best in the world. F1 Fanatic is, hi, in what way are you related to Marie Antoinette? Oh, you're talking to Joyce there. Did you have a family in Austria or France? Well, I'm anxious to see myself. Red Rose, I just love Charo. So funny and beautiful. Did you ever see Carol Burnett's takeoff on Charo? Woo! Oh my God. I remember when Carol Burnett's oldest daughter was still alive, they were on a talk show together. And Carol's oldest daughter, that was, you remember the punk era, with all the colors in their hair and the spikes and everything. She was going through that phase a little wild, and the daughter was talking about, I think her daughter Carrie was saying, yeah, people say I'm a little wild, but have you ever seen my mother do charo? I'd say the apple didn't fall too far from the tree. And there was an episode where she got Charo to be a guest on the Carol Burnett show, and she played Charo's mother. Check it out. I'm sure it's on YouTube. F1 Fennec, check. I have 2 I Dream of Jeannie bottles. You have 2 I Dream of Jeannie bottles. The first black and gold, and the second bottle in purple, made by Mario. Yes, that's where my bottle came from, Mario, the only officially authorized artist by the rights holder to I Dream of Jeannie. Did you get yours signed by Barbara Eden? Because they had Mario I didn't give his name earlier, I should have, but they had him at his booth selling the bottles, and he had bottles, all kinds of different ones. Like, the first season bottle was different from the second season on, because the first season was done in black and white, so it was obviously a less colorful bottle. The second season, which is what I have, that's the one with all the 60s mod psychedelic colors and everything. But that's great, you have yours. And of course, those Genie bottles were actually Jim Beam bourbon bottles, like limited edition bourbon bottles that came out around 1964 or so, and they were hand painted. And I think that you can still find those on places like eBay if you want to paint your own. But I think Mario made a mold from that bottle, and that's how he makes his right now, because they're extremely authentic. I put on I Dream of Jeannie on my big screen TV, my big 65-inch TV, and I've held the bottle up and I go, wow, he really captured this. But it's a lot of fun. F1, he sent you a photo of himself with Barbara in the bottle. They will they'll tour the country, going to different conventions, different cities. And it's all the more remarkable because I believe Barbara Eden turns 95 this year. In fact, the fact that she still has the stamina to do this. And when I saw her, she was posing for a lot of pictures with fans. And of course, everybody wanted her to do her Genie blink and hold her arms up like this. And I thought she was 91 at the time, to have to keep holding her arms like that couldn't have been easy. She probably had to do little weights and things just to strengthen the muscles to be able to do that still. And let's see, Clarence Fields, hey there, thank you for joining. And let me go slowly through these comments so I don't lose people again. I think I just did, darn it. I don't know. Sorry, let me go back a bit. There we go. Okay. F1 Fennec, you're correct, Chuck. Bottles are not inexpensive. Well, you know what made mine expensive is, the only reason I went to that Hollywood show was to get that bottle signed by Barbara Eden. So right off the top, it was $20 to park my car. It was $50 admission to get into the Hollywood show. And then I had to buy the bottle, which how much was that bottle? I'm trying to remember now. No, I think the bottle was around $200 or so, unsigned. And then Barbara Eden, and I don't blame her for this, she charged $40 to sign it. Don't blame her one bit. She had to be there, to make a living and all. And I believe I read she gives the money to charity, but she charges $40 for a signature. And part of that, a lot of stars charge for their signatures now because too many people are selling them on eBay. So this, allows them to be part of it. So by the time I was done, I think that bottle was over $300, but it was worth it. It was worth it to me. I grew up with that show. When I met Barbara Eden, I was able to truthfully say to her, I was 5 years old, and I vividly, and it's the truth, I vividly remember watching the very first broadcast episode of I Love Dreaming. I loved, oh boy, I was getting I Dream of Jeannie and I Love Lucy together. First episode of I Dream of Jeannie. I watched it and I was able to tell her that. I don't know if she cared, but it was, but it was kind of great to take it full circle like that, to be a little kid watching that show. And here's now old gray haired me talking to her and getting my bottle signed. Let's see, where's some other comments here. Is it true that Mel Brooks had a part in the TV show Get Smart? He was one of the creators of the show. I don't know if he was a producer or an executive producer, if he had any hand in writing or directing, but I know he was one of the creative forces behind Get Smart. And I don't know if he ever did like a cameo or a bit on the show. That'd be a fun thing to look up, because I'm not sure. Honestly, I haven't watched Get Smart in many, many, many years. I'm not up on that one like I should. I got to meet Don Adams once, really sweet guy. And Barbara Feldon, who played 99, is 95. The reason I know that is because she and Barbara Eden are very good friends, and they're the same age. And the last few pictures I saw of Barbara Eden, she's Barbara Feldon. Boy, I'm getting juxtaposed all over the place here. Barbara Feldon, she looked wonderful also. An F1 Fanic, yes, pets are very much our family. And Joanna, hi. Thank you for joining Amherst. Sent floating heart for 10 jewels. Well, that's very sweet of you. Thank you so much. Thank you. The F1 Fanic, that's how I feel about my cats. I feel honored to have gained their trust. They are family. With some cats, you have to earn their love. It seems like dogs, they just give it to you by default. But cats, some of them you have to work for it a little. You have to earn it. But I've always found that once you do earn it, you got it for life. I think for Sasha, it was pretty easy because she was 10 weeks old when I got her. I was just daddy right from the very beginning, and she bonded so deeply with me. And Siamese are notorious for bonding with one person, and I always, I told you I had some guilt, and I worried because when I went to Europe for 2 weeks, even though I had my dear friend Anastasia coming in here to the apartment to take care of her, and Sasha knew her very well, and I thought that might make the difference. It didn't. I got some really sad texts while I was in Europe about how Sasha was extremely depressed and moping and holding her head down like she'd given up on life. And Whimsy was intuitively picking up on that also. And one of the things Whimsy advised me to do was to make videos on my phone, talking to Sasha and just reassuring her, I was going to be coming home, and I'd bring her a little toy back from Rome. And also Whimsy said to reassure her that she had done nothing wrong, because according to Whimsy, she was picking up Sasha, thought, well, what did I do? What did I do to drive him away? Why did he want to leave? And of course, I was just consumed with guilt over that. And I was worried that even though everything was fine when I got home, if you guys saw that first show I did and I got back from Europe, Sasha was tear jumping up and down. And I was holding her up to the camera, and she was running across my lap desk while I was trying to do card readings for people. She seemed fine, but I always worried about that. Like, did something in her give up a little? I don't know. It was so strange because she had feline lymphoma, which hit her very, very, very quickly. I'm told many times cats will die within 4 weeks of diagnosis. And plus, in the case like Sasha's, she hid it from me. Cats and dogs are very good at hiding when they're sick. I didn't know until really the last 3 or 4 days that something was very wrong. She seemed fine even the week before. But I've had a little bit of guilt about that and worried. But she's assured me from the other side, don't be guilty. She's happy where she is. It's wonderful. But it's hard for us left behind. And Andy, your birthday is September 7th. We'll have to all remember that. Andy's asking Joyce a question about Maya. Oh, Joyce, Marie Antoinette is your 8th cousin, 6 times removed. That's quite a connection to royalty there. Quite a connection. Wow. I don't know if you saw my intuitive reading that I did last week for Marie Antoinette. I'm going to make it into a video and post it on my channel along with the others so you can see it that way. And oh, Maya thinks it's time for a treat around 9 p.m. It must be about that time for you in your time zone. Oh, thank you, F1 Fanic. Yes, that was from her death mask. I kept seeing conflicting things about it. It was her life mask and it was her death mask, but I hate to say it, but I'm sure it was her death mask. They had to take her severed head and do that. And that was one thing that made me a little reluctant to do the portrait, knowing it was a portrait of her severed head. But the way the mask was done, it looked peaceful. It looked like she would normally look if she was just at rest with her eyes closed. You say, oh, F1 Fennec, you have about 4 original bottles. I just saw that before this skipped on me again. Okay, here we are. Oh, you want to see the bottle, Whimsy? Yeah, I'll have to get up and I'll have to go to my cabinet and I'll have to leave blank space here. I could go get it, I guess. Do you guys mind blank space, an empty couch for about 30 seconds while I go get it? I'll be as fast as I can. All right. Be right back. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay, I'm coming back. I am coming back. Here is the genie bottle. I don't know if you can see here. Can you read that where it says to Chuck? And it says Barbara Eden, and below that in quotation marks she put Jeannie. I'm trying to do this in a way. Can you read that? See where she signed it? But I thought it was just cool that Barbara Eden held this bottle in her hands. If she hadn't signed it, it was just that act alone made it an authentic Jeannie bottle because it was held by Jeannie herself. But I keep it in my china cabinet. I keep it for safekeeping. I probably could put it out now. The reason I never put it out was because of Sasha. I didn't want her knocking it over and shattering it. There are so many things that I can do now that I couldn't do before. For example, my grocery store on Fridays sells $5 bouquets of fresh cut flowers. I used to think, wouldn't it be nice to have fresh cut flowers once in a while in my home? But I can't do that. Not with Sasha. Well, let me show you something. I get to have $5 fresh cut flowers now. So that is one of my few concessions to not having my darling little Sasha. So there we go. What else can I do? I can put my genie bottle out if I want. I can hang towels in my bathroom now. I mentioned this. For 11 years, I could not put towels on my rack because she would destroy them. I could never hang my bathrobe on my door. She would shred that and destroy it. A couple of leather chairs I had to keep blankets over them. I could never put up a Christmas tree. She would tear that down. So, I'd take my little baby back in a heartbeat. None of that matters to me. But, you do have to focus on the positive wherever you can find it. And those are a few things I do have since Sasha passed. But let's see here. You saw my genie bottle. Of course, Whimsy is a big I Dream of Jeannie fan, aren't you? That bottle is so worth it, isn't it? Yes, cost a friggin' fortune, but damn, it was so worth it. Imhurst, hi, Dr. Whimsy. I want to book an appointment soon. Okay, well, you can do that. Well, you can do that on Booksy, or you know what? You can get in touch with me because I book appointments for Dr. Whimsy. I just booked one for you today, Whimsy. So Imhurst, definitely get in touch with one of us. We will make that happen for you. Whimsy's staying pretty busy lately, but we'll get you an appointment. Yes, F1 Fanic, Mel Brooks created and wrote Get Smart. Oh yeah, Carol Burnett was on there, I believe. I haven't watched the show in a long time, but I think I vaguely remember that. And Andy, you have all 5 seasons on DVD. Oh, you are a fan. Okay, Andy, my question was, who was the manager that made the Marx Brothers wait in his office for a couple of hours? For some reason, I want to say that wasn't a manager, but it was Irving Thalberg, who was one of the heads of production at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. And it was after the Marx Brothers had been at Paramount and they were released, and MGM was strongly considering taking up their contract or signing a new contract with them. And I think Thalberg did make them wait outside, but I don't know if that's correct. I'd have to look that up. I'm trying to think, but it seems like that's the story at the back of my head. And Joyce Petrus, well, aren't you just royalty? Lucille Ball is my 8th cousin 2 times removed. Well, Lucille Ball, the first lady of comedy, and Lucille Ball was related distantly to Martha Ball Washington. And I forget how they were related, but Lucy mentioned that in her autobiography. So you would have that same relationship then. Let's see here. And Joyce, we still need to get together because we were going to do a very interesting chart on the very beginning of Lucy's career, which, the anniversary of that was in July when she came out to Hollywood on a train to replace a chorus girl whose mother would not let her come to Hollywood. And so Lucy got the spot and she came out to Hollywood, and that's where it all began. And you and I were going to do an astrological chart based on the location of where she was signed and the timing and the date, and factor in Lucy's own astrology. And it would have been interesting. Maybe we'll still do that sometime. Oracle of Whimsy. Oh, OMG, it's amazing. I want one so bad. Oh, Whimsy, we got to make that happen for you. We got to make it happen for you because I think Barbara Eden is going to sign again at one of the Hollywood shows here. I don't know, maybe I could do it on your behalf or something. We could figure out a way to get you your own signed genie bottle. If there's any person in the world who should have an I Dream of Genie bottle, it is Dr. Whimsy Anderson, not one of the #1 fans of the show. Here, I'll hold it up again. It is special, isn't it? Isn't that? And don't you agree? Doesn't it look just like the real thing? Mario did a good job with these. He really paid attention to detail and authenticity. And they're officially licensed, so I'm sure that Barbara Eden herself approves of them. And of course, you may know this, Barbara Eden owns one of the original bottles. I think I read she may have donated it to the Smithsonian Institution, but I don't know for fact. I think she said she was keeping it a few years ago. I read she was keeping it in a vault. She was afraid to even put it out. And I think she said she almost lost the bottle in the 1994 it was the Northridge earthquake. She said it fell off a very high shelf, but by some miracle it didn't shatter. And she realized she better keep better care of it. But yeah, this was held by Barbara Eden. In fact, Whimsy, I don't know if I ever sent you the video. I posted it on YouTube. I have the video of Barbara Eden signing the bottle to me. I'll look for it and send it to you later tonight if I can find it. But it's on my channel as well. Let's see, F1 Fennec. Oh, you're talking to Joyce Petrus here. I feel honored to meet you, as you should. She's a great lady. And boy, and you're asking her if she's been to France or Europe. Joyce, you've traveled the world. So yes, you have. Let me see here. Let's see. Well, she's related to Lucille Ball. Let's see. Oh, it's fun watching Chuck being tongue-tied tonight. Let's see. And Joyce Petrus, you're related to Shirley Temple? Gee, you never told me that. Oh, Andy, you're okay. It was Irving Thalberg. Yeah, but you threw me there and you asked me if it was a manager. And that's where I knew that wasn't the case. I think Thalberg was trying to put them in line, show them who's boss, because the Marx Brothers had a very wild reputation in real life too, for just being all over the place, especially Groucho. So Shirley, my God, Shirley Temple and Lucille Ball and Marie Antoinette, Joyce, wow. Wow, you've got some connections here. Andy, what if you have any famous people in my family tree? I guess for many of us, if you dig far enough and you go far, far on the branches, we can find at least somebody who was famous. Used to live, F1 Fennec used to live on the French-German border. I could list all the places I've been, but I won't. I know, isn't it great when we have enough travel under our belt? We can talk about things like that. My goodness, Imhurst, thank you for all you're sending to me. Thank you. And just think of all the great stuff at the Smithsonian. Oh, I've been to the Smithsonian. I haven't been there for many years, but I love it. I love the Natural History Museum. It's where they have a lot of memorabilia from movies, television shows, theater, literature. You're right. Fonzie's jacket is there. Archie and Edith's chairs are there. The original Charlie McCarthy ventriloquist mannequin is there. Those are just, oh my God, the ruby slippers from the Wizard of Oz are there. I've seen those at least a couple of times, and I was told by one of the security guards that the carpet around the exhibit had to be replaced several times because so many people were there walking over to see the ruby slippers. And of course, people were doing that thing where they were clicking their heels or their shoes together. So over time, that was wearing holes in the carpet. True story. Yeah, and your father's family goes back to colonial America. I used to live in Virginia. I used to go to Colonial Williamsburg a lot, in Jamestown, and I always loved that kind of history. How do I check who can be in my family tree? Well, I've never pursued this myself, but I understand, like Ancestor.com, there are a number of online services now that make it a lot easier to do this. You obviously have to feed in some information, but it can help you considerably and to guide you. Do I need a shovel to dig up my family tree? I think some of us have root rot in family trees. Yes, Andy, his Archie Bunker's chair is there. I've seen it. They have Archie and Edith's chairs side by side under plexiglass cases. I've seen them. And there was a story because that show was supposed to finish after the 8th season. And that's when the chairs were donated to the Smithsonian. There was a big ceremony, and Carol O'Connor and Gene Stapleton, Rob Reiner and Sally Struthers were there for the dedication. And then at the last minute, it was decided to renew All in the Family for a 9th and final season. But the chairs had been donated, and the original chairs were found in a thrift store on Fairfax Avenue near CBS in Los Angeles. Just cheap old thrift store chairs that became iconic. Well, when it came time to now have to replicate the chairs, Norman Lear said it costs something like $6,000 to have Archie Bunker's chair replicated from scratch. They had to like reweave the fabric and everything, and the frame, everything had to be done from scratch to recreate it, to make it look exactly like the original chairs. I think there was even they worked that joke into an episode of Frasier, the show with Kelsey Grammer. And they had that running joke throughout the entire 10 years of the show, where Frasier had this beautifully decorated apartment that looked like something out of Architectural Digest. And there was Frasier's father's chair, who was living with him, this ugly, horrible old chair with duct tape on it in the middle of the chair that he refused to relinquish. And there was an episode where I forget the circumstances, but I forget what happened to the chair, but somehow the chair got lost or something. And Frasier's father was, of course, devastated and very upset about how much the chair had meant to him. So Frasier, at incredible expense, like Archie Bunker's chair, like thousands and thousands of dollars, had the chair perfectly replicated right down to the duct tape. And the joke, as Frasier said, ironically, this is now the most expensive piece of furniture in the whole apartment. So, this little side tie-in there. And Andy, the odd story about Buddy Ebsen and his problem being the Tin Man. He nearly died. Because they were using aluminum powder on him, not like a foundation. They were actually powdering him with aluminum. He inhaled too much of the aluminum powder, and he had to be hospitalized for weeks. He nearly died. He could barely breathe. And he had filmed for about 2 weeks. I don't think any of the footage still exists. There are a lot of still photos of Buddy Ebsen as the Tin Man, but he had to be let go. And then, of course, the part went to Jack Haley, and they very quietly switched over to a metallic, like a paste foundation. What do you call it? Like anyway, what I mean, makeup foundation. They made like a paste that they could just rub on his skin. And they never mentioned to Jack Haley what had happened to Buddy Ebsen. They didn't want to get him scared, but that was the story there. But no, it was far worse than just an allergy. And, along those lines, no pun intended, and I say lines, Ray Bolger, that fabric, that burlap sack they had to mold around his face, I guess it was done with prosthetics, but Ray Bolger said he had imprints of the lines in the skin of his face for over a year after they finished making that movie. He didn't know if it was ever going to go away. And let's see, the lion. Why am I blanking on his name? I'm having a brain fart here. This is terrible. This is terrible. It'll come to me. We all know his name. Anyway, he had to wear an actual 90-pound lion skin costume with the prosthetic makeup, and I understand it was just unbearable for him, the heat, because it was an early Technicolor movie with these big overhead lights. And sometimes when on those early Technicolor films, the temperature would get over 100 degrees on the set. So let's see here. What were some other comments here? I don't want to get off my tangents here. Yes, that was the dog named Eddie on the show. Yeah, Joyce. It was aluminum powder in his lungs. Uh, let's see, Chuck, do you think you could have a chat with Mozart, perhaps? Well, I certainly can give it a try because you were the one who prompted me to do Marie Antoinette, and I was quite surprised with what came through. I had to work a little hard on that one because she was coming in and out almost like a radio signal, like a sometimes strong, sometimes weak. And also, I mentioned to you, I was concerned about imposters coming in pretending to be her. So I did a lot of testing of the material, but before I was certain I had something authentic there. But Mozart would be a lot of fun. One of my psychic friends said that I had Mozart and I knew each other in a lifetime, in his lifetime, in his incarnation, which I find intriguing because I adore listening to Mozart. Speaking of Mozart, I was listening to the classical symphony station on Sirius XM recently, and John Baptiste, wonderful, wonderful musician. He used to be on Stephen Colbert. He has a new album out called Black Mozart, where he plays Mozart, but he puts his own little personal little jazzy rhythm and blues twist to it. I very much want to hear that album. I love Mozart, and I was really intrigued when I was told I knew him in his lifetime. So yeah, okay, I will take your suggestion. Let me see what I can do. Give me a little time on that, and I'd love to contact him. It wasn't that long ago. Um, we all know the movie Amadeus, of course, and I know it's been on video, home video forever, and cable and stuff. But there was a screening of that late last year at a local movie theater. And it was such a treat to see that on a big screen again. I had seen it when it originally came out, but it is a bit apocryphal how accurate it is. There's some historians who insist that Mozart was not like that outrageous character Tom Hulce played in the movie. It was very entertaining, of course, but some are saying he wasn't that off the wall and crazy, and some say that there's no historical record that he actually laughed like that. That silly high pitched laugh. Though I think I remember Tom Hulce saying when he was researching the role, he found some old correspondence from Mozart and some of his friends where they mentioned the laugh, and that's what he based it on. But yeah, let's see what comes up. F1 Fennec. Oh, thank you. Work on Marie, and I'm looking forward to more about her. Yeah, I've got to, once I get the portrait completed, I'm going to record the video and I'm going to put it on my channel. F1 Fennec, you have questions for Mozart. What are some of those questions you have? I see we're at the end of the comments here, but what would you have me ask Mozart? I can't promise he would answer, but I'll put it to him. And also, while I have you, what is it, 7:49 right now? If I don't get too many more comments, I may cut this a little short because I've got some work to do tonight. But if you wanted me to read on anything, I'll be happy to do it. Where did I put my cards? Here they are. I had to set them down when I got up to get the genie bottle. Yes, thank you, Andy. It was Bert Lahr, and I know that so well. I know my Oz history very well, but I had one of those senior brain fart moments where I could not think of Bert Lahr's name. I have seen that costume in person. It was up for auction here in Los Angeles maybe 20 years ago, and I was at the auction preview, and they had it beautifully restored, and they even recreated his prosthetic lion's mask makeup, and I think it went for over $1 million. That was the final auction figure. But I've seen that costume, and at the Smithsonian Institution, they've got Dorothy's ruby slippers, and I don't know if it's still there or not, but at the time they had the original Scarecrow costume there. Now, the Tin Man costume, I understand nobody knows what became of it. Jack Haley was asked about it once, and he said, I don't know where it is, and I don't care. And he was basically saying the reason he didn't care is because it was a very uncomfortable costume that he had to wear for almost a year of filming. And he said, I just soon as never see that again. He tended to be a little bit of a curmudgeon compared to the other people about the movie. Whenever I'd see him in interviews, and sometimes I'd see him doing joint interviews with Ray Bolger. And Ray Bolger took him. He was a lot more appreciative, truthfully, as he said, I think once to Tom Snyder. If you remember Tom Snyder's old show, he was asked, do you get any residuals? Do you make any money off of The Wizard of Oz? And Jack Haley very grudgingly said, no, we don't get a cent off of it. And Ray Bolger said, we may not get residuals, but we got something better. We got immortality. We got immortality. I will always be the Scarecrow. You will always be the Tin Man. And that's worth more to me than money. Now, Jack Haley, I don't think he commented. I think he still would have read or have had the money. But I always love when people embrace the legacy of something like that. Margaret Hamilton played the witch. She was wonderful about embracing the history of the show. And it was really fun in the 1970s when she would do guest appearances, like famously Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, where she recreated her role of the Wicked Witch. And the old girl still had it in her. She could still scare the bejesus out of you with that cackle of hers. And there was also, it's on YouTube, it's considered a cult camp classic. It was the Paul Lynde Halloween special, and the one-time pairing of Margaret Hamilton as the Wicked Witch of the West and Billy Hayes from H.R. Pufnstuf as Witchy Poo. He brought Witchy Poo and the Wicked Witch of the West together. And of course, being the 70s, it was the disco era. And I think there were some disco-related musical production numbers. But, in hindsight, that's history. That's history. And Andy, yes, we will all be wishing you a happy 50th on Monday, September 7th. Happy birthday. I may it just be something very special that will lead to many special things further in your life. That's in Andy, the Scarecrow's costume, of course, is in the Smithsonian's. Well, I don't know if it's in the National Museum of African History, but I think it would be American history, wouldn't it? And Culture Holds costume. But let's say I should read the whole thing. It's Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture Holds costume. Oh, I get it. The Museum of African American History and Culture holds costumes from The Wiz. Please pardon me. I should have read the whole thing there. And of course, The Wiz is the Broadway musical adaptation with a black cast. And of course, the movie was made also takeoff on The Wizard of Oz. And of course, the movie had Diana Ross and Michael Jackson and Richard Pryor and Lena Horne as Glinda the Good Witch. Pretty special. And Margaret Hamilton, guested hard on the second Kolchak movie, The Night Strangler. Margaret Hamilton was a very prolific character actress. She used to appear everywhere in the, you see her in 60s and 70s shows like Gunsmoke, Lou Grant. She also used to do commercials for Maxwell House. She played a recurring character called Cora, the kindly Cora, very folksy, grandmotherly, nothing like the Wicked Witch of the West, who was always serving apple pie and Maxwell House coffee. But that Sesame Street episode, you are correct about that. It never re-aired. And for many years, it was next to impossible to find. I know I looked for it everywhere on the internet, YouTube, you couldn't find it. And the reason, and now get this, I remember watching it. I was not a kid at the time, but I remember watching it. I was like in high school and it was on, and I just thought, this is the greatest thing to see her playing that role again. So I always remembered it vividly and I wanted to see it again. But the story was that she was too good. And, the Wicked Witch of the West has scared generations and generations of children to death. you know, most of us can think back to the Wizard of Oz when we were a kid and we'd hear that evil cackle and it would just go right to our bones. Well, a lot of parents complained that she was too scary. She scared the children. And so the episode was pulled and it was never re-aired. And it was such a shame. But it is available now. You can find it. I know YouTube, sometimes things get pulled, but I think there are at least some clips of some kind of it on there. And I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. And Oscar the Grouch falls in love with her. He has a crush on her. He thinks she's just beautiful. And I think, if I remember correctly, the Wicked Witch was flying over Sesame Street and her broomstick came out from under her and she lost her broomstick. And remember Mr. Hooper, the kindly store owner? Mr. Hooper got the broomstick and he would not give it back to her because she was rude. And she wouldn't say, please, may I please have my broomstick back? And she had to turn herself into an old woman. Of course, she turned herself into Margaret Hamilton. And Margaret Hamilton is trying to get her broomstick back. And she has to grit her teeth and say, may I please have my broomstick? And he gives it to her and she turns back into the witch and flies off. It was something like that. That's how I remember it. I haven't seen it all in its entirety other than some clips. And of course, she was wonderful on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. That's on YouTube. And that is just the sweetest appearance. And I think she did that appearance out of response to all the children who were scared of her on Sesame Street. So this one was more Margaret Hamilton just playing herself, going on Mr. Rogers, sitting in the living room with him. And she's talking about her 3 grandchildren and talking about the making of the movie. And she has a suitcase with her and the witch's costume is in there. And only they demystify it. They have her turn around and they show Mr. Rogers pulling up the zipper and he goes, look, even witches have zippers. And she goes, look, Mr. Rogers, we have pockets too. And she was showing the pockets in the costume and putting on the hat. But she did it very slowly and talked about doing the character and how it was all make-believe. It was a pretend character, and she wanted to show that as she put the costume on. And they were even pointing out that, look, boys and girls, you can play witch too. Even little boys can be a witch if they want to. And she said, Mr. Rogers, that's right, they can. And so it's very sweet. Look it up. You can't watch it and not have a smile on your face. And F1 Fanic, as far as Mozart being reincarnated, I don't know. It was the same thing even with Marie Antoinette. I wasn't sure in the beginning. I wasn't sure. See, you can get imposters. There's some naughty entities, souls that can pretend to be. So you have to be careful with that. You have to train yourself to know how to recognize that. So I was very, very careful with Marie Antoinette. I feel I'm probably going to have to do something similar with Mozart. I'm not even going to try to answer that question right now until I look into it. It's not impossible he's been reincarnated, but maybe not. I will just be as honest as I can be with whatever I find. And please give me some time on that also, like you did with the Marie Antoinette. Yes, and it was true because it scared kids. Oh my God, F1 Fenix, she was the perfect witch. I mean, she was the consummate witch. She was born to be the witch. Margaret Hamilton in real life was a very sweet, gentle woman. She was a kindergarten teacher. She was a mother of a young son, and she was a kindergarten teacher before she became an actress. She loved children. And she was saying in an interview how much she loved the Wizard of Oz books. And it was her agent who approached her. Everybody called her Maggie. Maggie, MGM is interested in you for the Wizard of Oz. And she was like, really? What role? And the agent or manager said, well, the witch. What else would they want you for? And there's a clip of Margaret Hamilton telling that story to an audience, and everyone was laughing. What else would they want you for but the witch? And of course, we know that she was seriously burned making that movie. That story's been told many times, including here, where on the set, the scene where she bursts into the fireball, it was on the second take because there was this elevator in the floor of the soundstage. And I've been on that soundstage. I took a tour of the studio once. They took us on that soundstage. It's still one of the largest sound stages in the world. I don't think it's the largest, but it's one of the largest. And that trap door, they pointed that out to us. This is where Margaret Hamilton rose up. They had an elevator that she rose up and down with. And there was the big burst of fire. Well, there was something that went wrong with the timing. She wasn't lowered fast enough or something, and she got 3rd-degree burns. It was so bad, and the makeup artist was horrified because the green makeup she was wearing had copper in it, and on her burned skin, that could have been extremely toxic. It also would have left horrific scars on her skin. So the makeup artist took her by the arm quickly and said, Maggie, I am so sorry. I've got to do this to you. And he gave her a towel to bite down on because the pain was so horrific. He had to take swabs and alcohol on her burned skin to get that makeup off of her. And she said it was horrific. She had tears running down her face, and she was wanting to scream. And he said, just bite down on the towel. And he got the makeup off of her. It was on her hands too. It was on her hands, on her face. And she said MGM did not have the courtesy to even have someone drive her home. She had to drive herself home with the burns, and it took her almost 6 weeks to recover before she could come back to work. And she said she was so afraid about suing the studio because she thought she would never work again. So she didn't sue for that reason. And F1 Fangy said, I missed your question above. Well, here, let me go back up here. Okay, your last, I saw your comment. She was the perfect witch. And oh, yes. And there, Andy, you're right. There was an episode where Mr. Hooper died. The actor died, and they wrote it into the show that Mr. Hooper had also died. And, and they had a very frank discussion about it for the children in the audience going to Big Bird. So anyway, let me find your question. Oh, you said I missed your above question. I'm trying to find it here. Let me go back a little further here. Well, wait, are you asking, your question about has Mozart reincarnated? Because I answered that. I said that I don't know. I said, is that the question you meant? Or I said, but I was saying in response to that, I would have to look into it and see. Right now off the top of my head, I don't know. But did you have another question? I'm looking. Oh, wait. Oh, okay. Perhaps you could ask him what he thinks. Okay. That's a good question. Perhaps you could ask him what he thinks of current music production tools and synthesizers, just to start. Something for the next show. Well, I will try that. That's a very good question, which leads me to when I did my tongue-tied again, when I did my Amelia Earhart video. And there was a little bit of modern terminology worked into what she was saying to me. And I had one person write to me, well, I know you're fake because Amelia Earhart would not have said that in 1937. And I had to graciously point out I wasn't channeling Amelia Earhart in 1937. I was channeling her now in the moment. because spirits are very aware of what's going on now. So I'm sure if Mozart is in the spirit world, he would be conscious of this, and I would love to know what he would have to say. I, you know, without going into it, I don't want to go into it here right now because I want to do a proper channeling session, but I have to believe he would have been very open to, to anything that would allow you to express whatever is in your head, whatever you're channeling, whatever you're receiving. And if let's just say, for example, a synthesizer would have said what he wanted to say, I'm sure he would have been for that. But I will ask the question. I'll ask it directly. Because I'm sure you look back in history, creative figures, if they had our modern tools now, they would have loved it. But then again, the tools they had of the day maybe forced them to be more creative because they were more limited in what they had to work with. Like you had to say what you had to say with, say, a string section or a piano or a harp or with percussion. It's just so astounding. I mean, I realize this is an obvious thing to say, but to listen to music that was written 300 years ago and it's still so relevant and so beautiful and so stirring and so divine, very much channeled from the other side. I believe Mozart was a great, great channeler. They even implied that in the movie Amadeus, when Salieri was trying to take dictation, when Mozart was so sick and he was on his deathbed, and Salieri was trying to follow him and couldn't. I don't understand, because Mozart was just in such a realm of genius, what he was receiving. And for him, it was like breathing. It was like exhaling when it would come out of him, where someone, Amadeus famously plays up the mediocrity of Salieri. That's part of the plot, and maybe it's kind of mean to Salieri because his music wasn't that mediocre. I've heard his compositions, but they were implying that he was mediocre. Even at the end of the movie, he calls himself the patron saint of mediocrity. He just did not have Mozart's genius. So you got me intrigued here. Okay, so I hope I answered the right question there. Pardon me for missing that. It's hard to keep up with all of these. Yeah, Andy, they were great in The Wiz, those two. Okay. Well, Andy, if I miss comments, it's very hard to talk and keep up with these. I do my best. I really try. And also sometimes for expediency, because I've got to finish up the show soon. It's already after 8. I sometimes have to speed through some things with apologies to you. Let's see here. And you heard a story about Larry Fine getting hurt on Three Stooges short when Larry got a pen shot at his head and Moe was mad enough he chased the director down. I don't know about that. Unfortunately, I don't know a whole lot about the Three Stooges. So I'm not sure about that story. I'm so sorry. How did they cover her part? They just shot around her, shot other scenes. As far as I know, that moment, where she was being lowered, the escalator lowered her down in the ball of fire, that was her last scene in that moment in Munchkin City, and then she doesn't appear for quite a bit later in the movie. So that's probably how they worked around it. And also, it's very interesting for the impact that Margaret Hamilton made. She only has 9 total minutes of screen time in the whole movie. And that's a fact. So that's probably why they didn't need her for a few weeks. Okay. Well, what any joke you have said to that person? I don't know where were you there at that time? Did you use a time machine? What? I'm not sure if I understand your question, Andy. I was just saying you might be referring, I had a psychic friend tell me that I shared a lifetime with Mozart. Now, I have never really looked into that further, other than I find it interesting. And I know I love Mozart. I love, the music of Mozart, but otherwise, No, I don't know too much about that. But if I do speak with him, it will be a guided channel reading, much as I've done with my others, like with Amelia Earhart and with Marie Antoinette. Um, Sister Wolf, hello there. And F1 Fennec, they did not have all the distractions we have today. And, speaking of distractions, it would not surprise me if Mozart did not have serious ADHD. If the little things I've seen about him, certainly what was implied in the movie Amadeus, many great creative geniuses have ADHD. And so I'm wondering, I would imagine he was someone who could be easily distracted for that reason. But he was definitely a genius. He was also, of course, it is a fact, he was a child prodigy. What he could do when he was even 6 years old, when he was playing before crowned heads of Europe. And Mozart could be blindfolded and play. They showed this in Amadeus, where he was turned around backwards and he was playing from behind his head. It just was in his DNA. Oh, Andy, that's very true. Scenes are rarely shot in order in a movie. Very rarely shot in order. Usually, like if you've got a massive set like the Munchkin City, for example, you're going to do everything you need to do, get that all out of the way. The Emerald City sequences, they would certainly shoot all those together and piece it together. It's common. I understand it's quite a luxury for an actor if a movie is shot in sequential order. And on rare occasions, I'm trying to think of an example of one, it will be shot in sequential order for the benefit of the actor's performance, because the director feels that that's more important, to give the actors that sense of continuity. I think Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is an example of a movie that was shot in sequential order, but of course that was also mostly done on one set. I'm just trying to think of some other things where they did that. Well, maybe it'll come to me or it'll come to some of you. Amherst says, someone from Kansas, The Wizard of Oz was always a favorite growing up. I think it was a favorite for almost any of us. Because, there was, most of us remember when the only time you could ever watch The Wizard of Oz was one time a year. One time a year when it would show up on one of the networks. It had like a 40-year run before it was finally, I think Ted Turner, Turner Classic Movies, he bought one. When he bought that, he got the rights to the movie and he moved it over to Turner Classic Movies, and then it started showing up on home video. It's been on every possible format: VHS, beta, Laserdisc, DVD, Blu-ray, 4K, digital download, whatever comes next. I'm sure it'll appear on that. So Wizard of Oz is now something you can watch anytime you want. I mean, I have a copy of it on my iPhone and my iPad. I could pull it up right this moment if I wanted to. But that was special when it was once a year. And I think many of us can remember when we were kids and we would be there on the floor in front of the TV. And sometimes we'd have snacks and things, or we'd have friends with us. And you'd hear that opening music. And it always felt like an event. Like, this is a big event. And sometimes I'm sorry that people don't get to have that experience anymore. Let's see, what else do we have here? The only thing I know about that famously happened in Geneseo, Illinois, where I live, is that Butch Patrick lived there during the Munsters. Oh, that's interesting. Well, my hometown in Virginia, this was long after I had moved away, but Bob Denver, who played Gilligan on Gilligan's Island, lived about 30 miles from my hometown. But that was long after I was gone. A lot of stars will do that. They'll retire small communities and things. Oh my God, Joyce, I agree with you. Judy Garland. I am of the opinion she was the single greatest talent ever to come out of the old Hollywood studio system. Truly, she could do anything. She was a fabulous comedian. She was a dancer. She was an extraordinary dramatic actress. And then, of course, she had probably the greatest female singing voice of the 20th century. I mean, I saw an interview with Barbara Streisand with Howard Stern, and he was trying to egg her on, because Barbara's saying, I have a good voice, very modest. I have a good voice. Yeah, boy, that's being modest. But she said, no, I'm not the greatest singer of the 20th century. Everybody wants to call me that. No, Judy Garland. This is coming from Barbara Streisand. Judy Garland was the greatest singer of the 20th century. And then she went on to say that the two women were friends. She was very close with Judy Garland for real and life. And of course, that's that wonderful time they worked together on the Judy Garland show. And thank goodness that those clips are easily available. To hear those voices together, it's stunning. Yeah, Sam Hurst. I miss those days when movies were events. Just think in the future where movies are made in VR. I'm not sure what VR is, where you feel like you're in the movie. Oh, virtual reality. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of things. And then AI can do things like that too. And I know that showing of The Wizard of Oz in Las Vegas right now, I think it's at the place called the Sphere, is controversial because they used AI to change the movie and add to it. And I'm of the belief you don't mess with a masterpiece. You leave it alone. You leave it alone. But I don't know if I would go see that. Oh yeah, I know that song. Let's go down to the lobby, have ourselves a snack. In fact, my local movie theater here in Las Vegas still shows that before the movies. Frank Sinatra learned how to phrase from Judy Garland. I believe that. He also said that he learned a lot of his technique from Billie Holiday. Gave her a lot of credit. And I don't know if you know this, but Frank Sinatra and Judy Garland had a love affair in the 1940s. And this was not confirmed for many, many years, but their love letters turned up and, of course, were being auctioned off. Talk about a violation of privacy there, but it did confirm that they were lovers at one time. Talk about making beautiful music together. Oh my God, I have a little quick story I can tell. It's a secondhand story. It's not my personal story, but it's kind of my story because it came from my friend Evelyn Keyes, the wonderful movie actress Evelyn Keyes, who of course played Sue Ellen in Gone with the Wind, and she was a fairly big star in the 1940s. I knew Evelyn very well, and Evelyn told me a story of, this was when she was married to John Huston. And he threw a big birthday party for her and invited a lot of stars. And Evelyn told me that Frank Sinatra and Judy Garland came up together to sing happy birthday to her. And I was like, what? And Evelyn was just very matter of fact. Yeah, they both sang to me. And I was like, Evelyn, Judy Garland and Frank Sinatra together sang happy birthday to you. Just, yeah. She was so low key about it. And I thought, that's unbelievable. Oh, and then she worked into the conversation. Oh, yeah. And there was this young starlet named Marilyn Monroe who was there also. But can you imagine having Frank and Judy sing happy birthday? Just one of them sing happy birthday to you, but both of them? Gee. Andy, I hate how they treated Judy. And she was sick and they had her filled full of prescriptions. Yeah, because I've got to wrap this show up soon. I could talk for 2 or 3 hours on that topic. There's a lot. And I even have some videos that I posted where I've gone to Judy's grave and I've used that as a backdrop to tell some of the stories. But yeah, it is very, very tragic how she was treated. And I'll just leave it at that for right now. Thank you for asking people to show me some love there. Well, I love getting your love. I feel it. Thank you. Oh yes, as Amherst said, that's all very, very true. It was a vicious, vicious cycle because the studios, they wanted to get their money's worth out of their stars, and they would work stars like Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland sometimes 16 to 18 hours at a stretch. And to do that, they would pump them up full of amphetamines. And the other reason for that was for Judy, because they were always trying to keep her weight down, and amphetamines act as diet pills, appetite suppressants, and stimulate metabolism. So they would pump her up full of amphetamines and work her to death, almost to death. That's not putting it too lightly. And then the poor girl, and she'd come home, couldn't sleep. So then she'd have to take sleeping pills, and then of course take the uppers to get back on. That led to a lifelong addiction, and ultimately her death at the age of 47. I never believed it was a suicide. I think her body just gave out from all of those pills. There were several times she almost died. There was one time in the late 50s she had serious hepatitis, and her body was so bloated, full of fluids. I think they had to drain like 20 pints of fluid out of her. And she was in the hospital for weeks. And they told her at the time that she was going to be an invalid and never work again. But Judy proved them wrong. She came back to life many, many times, but it finally caught up with her. And I told the story in one of my videos on my channel in front of her grave, because I was tying in a story with when the actors and writers were on strike at the time, and I had to edit it a little because I had to take out some references. But they had ways of getting around union rules because they wanted to get as much work out of Judy as they could. When she was doing The Wizard of Oz, the hairdresser and the makeup artist would come to her home at 3:30 in the morning and wake her up, shampoo her hair, set it, dry it, and then in the car onto the way to the studio, they'd be doing her hair and doing her makeup and everything. So she'd be ready to work as soon as she got out of the car. It's like 6:30 in the morning. And that was a big violation of union rules and regulations, but there wasn't much she could do to fight it. Oh, thank you, Joyce. Thank you for your compliment. About Evelyn Keyes. Oh, Andy, she heard all the jokes about her name, Keyes. In fact, she used to write a column for the LA Times called Keys to the City, where she actually played on her name. Bye, Joyce. Thank you for joining. Kadam, that's my YouTube channel called Double Feature Drive-In, live stream and chat with 2 movies with the cartoon trailers and intermission. That does sound like fun. Yes, Liza has had lots of health problems over the years. She's 80 now, not doing too well. But some of that is drug related, alcohol related, drug related, and this is her own admission. But some of it also is because of all of her years as a dancer. All those Bob Fosse moves, those hip pops and things. She's had hip replacements, and I think she's broken her back, if I'm not mistaken. She's not in good shape right now. Oh, Amherst, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining. In fact, Liza, her autobiography came out this year, and she was supposed to do a series of interviews across the country where she was going to appear on stage and do question and answers. And that she only did one, and it was here in LA. It didn't go over too well. I think they had to cut it short after about 40 minutes. She just was not in good shape on stage, and she ended up canceling all the other show dates. And she gave this reasons, claiming she had a bad cold, but they never rescheduled the shows. Yes, Andy, Judy had a daughter also, Lorna Luft. She was married to a man named Sid Luft, and her other 2 children were Lorna and Joey Luft. I've met Lorna, very nice lady. Liza, I've seen in person a few times. I saw Joey once at an event, but I didn't get to go up and talk to him. But I have seen all 3 of the children in person. And where Judy is interred, there are spaces there the word is there, the three spaces are for her three children to be interred alongside their mother. We shall see. And but Lorna is a wonderful entertainer. I've met her and I've also seen her on stage 4 times. So I guess before I go, because it's almost 8:30, did anybody have another question for me or anything? Otherwise, I am going to go ahead and sign out. I'm going to sign out. I'm going to say, I hope I didn't miss anything important here. Let me just take a quick run here. Asking me about Mozart. Just doing this for my own peace of mind. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything really, really big. If not, I did. Please call my attention to it next week. Let me go back. Let's see. Okay, I guess I got everything. So I'm going to sign out for now. As always, you can reach me through Gmail. Just my name's backwards, one word, dransfieldchuck@gmail.com. You can commission me for readings. You can commission me for original artwork. I'm working on a couple of portraits right now for a couple of really wonderful people. And also, you can see me on Tuesdays and Thursdays on the Oracle of Whimsy channel, where I do a show with the wonderful Dr. Whimsy Anderson and Joel Tilson. Taco Tuesdays and Hot Topics Thursdays, we do readings live on the air, usually around a lot of current event news stories. So please, if you feel so inclined, join us. We have a lot of fun on there. It's a great privilege for me. Thank you all for joining me. Oh, hi, Pam. I'm so sorry. I saw on my phone that you tried to call me earlier today, and I'm so sorry. I was so busy because I was having to make calls for Whimsy, and I missed that. I'm sorry, but I know you're working on a Sasha pillow for me. Pam is a gift. I mentioned you earlier. What a wonderful psychic you are. But I know you're also a fabulous artist. And Pam is so creative, and she is making a very true to life Sasha pillow just for me as a keepsake and a remembrance of my beloved Sasha. And that's so very, very dear to you. Very dear. In fact, Pam and I met on the show. I was doing an interview, and it was an arranged interview. I had a manager at the time. We won't go into that now, will we, Pam? But she arranged the interview. It was done through split screen with you in Canada. And we just had so much fun with the interview. The show was over. The cameras were still on. And as you will recall, we ended up talking for about another 4 hours or so afterwards. And we've been very good friends ever since. But I just know that Sasha pillow is going to be something very, very special. And anyway, I'm good because it is almost 8:30 and I've been on here for 2 hours and 22 minutes. I think it is time for me to sign off because I've got some artwork to get back to and some work and preparation for the show tomorrow with Whimsy. I love you. I thank you. You make this possible for me. You're the lifeblood of this. The fact that all of you come out here for me. And just please know it's always my honor. So I'm going to say goodnight for now.